I, Alpha Kale of the Crimson Rock Pack, hereby sever all ties with you, Ilara. He boomed, his voice a physical blow that sent a tremor through my bones. My rejection. It was happening not in the quiet dignity of a private chamber, but here, in the center of the great hall, with hundreds of eyes, gleaming, wolfish, and pitiless, fixed on me. The silver mate mark on my shoulder, once a source of searing pride, now felt like a brand of shame, its light flickering weakly as his words hammered the final nail into the coffin of my worth. He didn't just reject me, he shattered the very essence of my being, leaving the jagged pieces scattered across the cold stone floor for everyone to see. Laughter, sharp and cruel as broken glass, erupted from the assembled pack members, echoing the hollowness that had just been carved into my soul. My world, once vibrant with the promise of love and belonging, had just dissolved into a monochrome nightmare of public humiliation. Wait, before the next revelation unfolds, if this mystery has already captivated you, let us know where you're following this story from. To ensure you don't miss unexpected claims, broken bonds, or awakenings under the moon, subscribe and stay close. Now, back to the scene. My gaze remained locked on Kale, the man I had loved since we were children, the Alpha who was supposed to be my destiny. His face, usually a canvas of strength and warmth, was now a mask of cold indifference. Beside him, shimmering in a gown the color of spilled blood, stood Lyra, the beta female whose ambition was as sharp as her perfectly manicured claws. Her smirk was my undoing. It was a triumphant, venomous curve of the lips that told me this wasn't just a rejection, it was a meticulously planned execution of my spirit. You are no longer recognized as a daughter of this pack, Kale continued, his voice devoid of the warmth I once cherished. Your Omega blood is a taint we can no longer afford. From this moment forward, you will serve. You will clean the floors, scrub the pots, and mend the clothes of those you once called your peers. You will earn your keep, or you will be cast out into the wilds. Do you understand? The words were meant to break me, to force me to my knees in a torrent of tears and pleas, but something inside me, a flicker of defiance I didn't know I possessed, refused to be extinguished. I lifted my chin, my spine straightening, even as my heart fractured. My voice, when it came, was a mere whisper, yet it carried the weight of my shattered dreams. I understand, Alpha. The title was the only respect I would afford him. The man, the friend, the mate, he was gone. The laughter intensified, a cacophony of derision that followed me as I was stripped of my fine clothes and handed a rough, scratchy servant's tunic. The soft leather shoes I wore were replaced with thin, worn-out slippers. My hair, once carefully braided with silver clasps, was unceremoniously tied back with a piece of twine. I was erased. Ilara, the Alpha's intended, was dead. In her place stood a ghost in rags. The days that followed blurred into a monotonous cycle of grueling labor and relentless torment. I woke before the sun, my body aching from sleeping on a thin straw pallet in a tiny, windowless room in the servants' quarters. My hands, once soft and skilled at embroidery, became raw and calloused from harsh soaps and endless scrubbing. I was invisible, a shadow flitting through the pack house, my head bowed, my eyes fixed on the floor. The pack members, emboldened by their Alpha's cruelty, took pleasure in my debasement. They would accidentally spill wine on freshly mopped floors, sneering as I cleaned up their mess. They would leave their muddy boots for me to polish, their torn garments for me to mend. Lyra was the worst. She would summon me for the most trivial tasks, her eyes glittering with malice as she watched me work. She would hold up her hand, now adorned with the betrothal bracelet Kael had once given me, and admire it while I was on my hands and knees scrubbing the hearth. "Careful, Omega," she'd purr, her voice dripping with false concern. "You wouldn't want to get any of your filth on the stones." Each taunt was a fresh cut on my already wounded soul. But with every insult, that tiny flicker of defiance within me grew stronger, hotter. I would not let them see my tears. I would not give them the satisfaction of knowing they had broken me. I poured all my pain, all my anger, all my sorrow into my work. The floors of the pack house had never been cleaner, the laundry never whiter, the meals never more efficiently served. I became the perfect servant, my silence my shield, my diligence my armor. My wolf, Luna, was a constant, aching presence within me. She was a creature of moonlight and silver fur, a spirit of the wild forest. But since the rejection, she had retreated, her proud howl silenced, her spirit wounded. The mate bond, though severed by Kael, had left a festering wound on our shared soul. We could still feel him, a distant echo of power and presence, a constant reminder of what we had lost. And we could feel his bond with Lyra solidifying, a nauseating wave of triumphant passion that would send shudders of agony through us in the dead of night. It was during one of these sleepless nights, as I lay on my pallet listening to the distant sounds of celebration for the upcoming mating ceremony, that I felt something shift in the air, a tremor in the earth, a change in the wind. A new scent, unfamiliar and potent, drifted through the cracks in my door, the scent of pine needles after a storm, of ancient earth, and of power so immense it made the very air crackle. Luna stirred within me for the first time in weeks, her head lifting, her ears perked. "Danger," she whimpered, but there was a note of something else in her tone, curiosity. The next morning, the pack house was in an uproar. Whispers flew through the halls like startled birds. A delegation had arrived in the night. An alpha from the north, they said. The alpha of alphas. The supreme alpha of the Western Territories, Ronan. He was a figure of legend, a wolf of immense power and renown, whose pack, the Moonstone Ridge, was the oldest and most respected of all. No one knew why he was here. An alpha of his stature did not make social calls. I was tasked with serving the high table during the formal breakfast, a position usually reserved for the most trusted servants. But Lyra had insisted. She wanted me there, to witness her beside Kael, to see her play the part of the gracious Luna-to-be in front of their powerful guest. She wanted to rub my nose in my own misery. I kept my eyes downcast as I entered the great hall, my hands steady as I carried a heavy pitcher of water. The room was thick with tension. Kael sat at the head of the table, his posture rigid, a strained smile on his face. Lyra was beside him, preening and posturing. And across from them sat the guest. I didn't need to see his power. It radiated from him in waves, a palpable force that demanded respect, that commanded silence. It was the scent from the night before, magnified 100 times. When I finally dared to lift my gaze, my breath caught in my throat. He was nothing like Kael. Where Kael was fair-haired and built like a brawler, this alpha was dark and lean, his power contained in a deceptively calm exterior. His hair was black as a raven's wing, his eyes the color of molten gold. There were scars on his face, faint white lines that spoke of battles fought and won. He wasn't handsome in the conventional way. He was dangerous, beautiful, and terrifying all at once. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The noise of the hall faded away. In that fleeting moment, I felt a jolt, a shock of recognition that went soul deep. Luna, my dormant, broken wolf, surged forward, howling a single silent word in my mind. Mate. I stumbled, the pitcher slipping from my grasp. Water sloshed onto the floor, a mere splash in the sudden, deafening silence that had fallen over the room. Every eye was on me. Kale's face was a thundercloud of fury. Lyra's was a mask of triumphant glee. "Useless Omega," Kale snarled. "Clean up your mess and get out." Shame washed over me, hot and suffocating. I knelt to pick up the pitcher, my hands trembling. But before my fingers could close around the handle, a deep voice, smooth as polished granite, cut through the tension. "Leave it." It was the visiting Alpha, Ronan. He was looking at me, his golden eyes narrowed, an unreadable expression on his face. He pushed back his chair and stood, his movements fluid and precise. The sheer force of his presence was overwhelming. He walked around the table and stopped in front of me, a towering figure eclipsing the world. He knelt, not with the grace of a courtier, but with the solid, grounded motion of a warrior. He was on one knee before me, the rejected Omega, the servant girl in rags, the Alpha of Alphas. His hand reached out, not to touch me, but to pick up the pitcher. His fingers brushed against mine. Fire. A searing, brilliant bolt of lightning shot up my arm, arcing through every nerve in my body. It was the mate bond, but not the faint, flickering ember I had shared with Kale. This was a raging inferno, a supernova of connection and belonging that left me breathless. He looked from my hand to my face, his golden eyes searching mine. I could see the shock mirrored there, the dawning realization. The scent of pine and earth intensified, wrapping around me like a protective cloak. From the head of the table, a choked gasp. It was Kale. His face had gone pale, his eyes wide with disbelief and a dawning, terrible horror. Lyra looked from Ronan to me, her triumphant smirk dissolving into a snarl of confusion and rage. The entire Crimson Rock pack watched in stunned silence as the most powerful alpha in the territories, Ronan of the Moonstone Ridge, remained on one knee before the servant girl. He held the pitcher in one hand, his gaze locked on mine, and in the depths of his golden eyes I saw not pity, not contempt, but a question, a promise, and the beginning of a reckoning. The great hall remained frozen in a tableau of disbelief. The scent of ozone and raw power rolled off Alpha Ronan in palpable waves. He didn't seem to notice the dozens of stunned wolves staring at him. His entire world appeared to me, the girl kneeling in a puddle of water, dressed in rags. What is the meaning of this? Kyle finally managed to choke out, his voice tight with fury and humiliation. He stood so abruptly his chair screeched against the stone. "Alpha Ronan, this is a servant, a clumsy, worthless Omega. She is beneath your notice." Ronan didn't even glance at him. His golden eyes held mine, and a low growl rumbled in his chest, a sound so deep and resonant it vibrated through the floor. It wasn't a threat directed at Kyle, it was a warning to the entire world, a protective, possessive claim. He stood, pulling me up with him with a gentle but firm grip on my arm. The shock of his touch was so intense it left me dizzy. He turned to face Kyle, his expression now hard, his eyes like chips of amber ice. "Her name," he commanded. It wasn't a request. Kyle faltered. She was Ilara. Was? Ronan's voice was dangerously soft. Lyra, seeing her moment of glory dissolving into a spectacle of her rival's unexpected elevation, chimed in, her voice shrill. He rejected her. She's nothing, a broken toy. Her Omega blood was too weak for an alpha like Kyle. Ronan's head snapped toward her. He didn't speak, but he didn't have to. The sheer force of his glare was enough to make her flinch back, her bravado evaporating. He then turned his piercing gaze back to Kyle. "You rejected her?" he asked, a deadly calm settling over his words. "You found this treasure, and you cast her aside?" He gestured to me, and for the first time, I felt like something other than dirt. I felt seen. "She is my mate," Ronan declared, and the words echoed in the cavernous hall like a judgment. The pack gasped as one. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird beating its wings against a cage. It couldn't be true. I was a rejected Omega, a servant. Mates were a gift from the moon goddess, a sacred bond. How could I be fated to two alphas? Unless the first bond was a mistake, a lie. Kale's face contorted in a mask of rage and disbelief. "That's impossible! She was mine! The bond was there!" Was it? Ronan's lips curved into a humorous smile. A true mate bond cannot be broken by a simple rejection. It is a bond of the soul. What you had was a flicker of attraction, perhaps, a convenience. You mistook a candle for the sun. He looked down at me, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. And you allowed him to dim your light. My breath hitched. He saw me, not the servant, not the Omega, but the light he believed I held within. "This changes nothing," Kale blustered, trying to reclaim some semblance of authority. "She is a member of my pack, and she is a servant. Her status is decreed." "Her status has just been elevated," Ronan countered smoothly. "As my mate, she is the Luna of the Moonstone Ridge Pack. She holds a rank far superior to anyone in this room, including you, Alpha Kale." He spoke the title with a dismissive air that was a graver insult than any curse. He turned to me, ignoring the sputtering rage of Kale and the venomous glare of Lyra. "Come with me, Ilara. You do not belong here." He offered me his hand. It was a choice, a lifeline. I looked from his strong, steady hand to Kale's furious face, then to the pack members who had tormented me, their expressions now a mixture of fear and confusion. Leaving meant stepping into an unknown world, beside a man whose power was both terrifying and alluring. Staying meant a life of continued servitude, of being a ghost in my own home. There was no choice at all. I placed my trembling hand in his. His fingers closed around mine, warm and strong. The connection, the bond flared between us, a comforting heat that chased away the chill of the last few weeks. "You cannot take her!" Kale roared, taking a step forward. Ronan didn't turn, but his pack, who had been standing silently by the entrance, moved as one. They were only 4 warriors, but they moved with a lethal grace that made the Crimson Rock Guards look like clumsy pups. They formed a silent, unbreachable wall. "I am not taking her," Ronan said, his voice carrying easily through the hall. "She is coming with me, of her own free will." He looked down at me, his eyes asking the question. I gave a small, firm nod. That was all he needed. Without another word, he led me from the great hall. The 4 Moonstone warriors fell in step behind us, their presence a silent, deadly promise of what would happen if anyone tried to stop us. We walked through the pack house, past the kitchens where I had scrubbed pots, past the laundry where I had washed the clothes of my tormentors. We walked out the main doors and into the sunlight. I blinked, the brightness unfamiliar after so much time spent in the shadows. A carriage, sleek and black, drawn by two massive black horses, was waiting. One of Ronan's warriors opened the door. Ronan helped me inside, his touch gentle, respectful. As I settled onto the plush velvet seat, I looked back at the pack house. Kale and Lyra stood on the steps, their faces masks of fury. The rest of the pack had spilled out behind them, a sea of confused and fearful faces. They had laughed at my fall. Now they were witnessing a rise they could never have imagined. The carriage door closed, shutting out the sight of my past. Ronan sat across from me, his presence filling the small space. The carriage lurched forward, and I was on my way to a new life. The journey was a blur of silent contemplation. I was overwhelmed, my thoughts a whirlwind of shock, fear, and a fragile, burgeoning hope. Ronan didn't press me to talk. He simply watched me, his golden gaze steady and patient. He exuded a calm that slowly began to soothe my frayed nerves. After a long while, he spoke. "They hurt you." It was a statement, not a question. I could only nod, my throat tight with unshed tears. "They will not hurt you again," he vowed, and the conviction in his voice was absolute. I will not allow it. Luna, my wolf, who had been so silent for so long, stirred within me, a soft purr of agreement vibrating through my soul. She recognized the truth in his words. She recognized the strength of our new mate. We arrived at the Moonstone Ridge Packlands as dusk was painting the sky in shades of lavender and rose. The territory was different from the rugged, rocky lands of the Crimson Rock Pack. This was a place of ancient forests, crystal-clear rivers, and mountains that touched the clouds. The air was clean and crisp, filled with the scent of pine and magic. The pack house was not a fortress like Kale's, but a sprawling, elegant manor built of white stone and dark wood, nestled in a valley beside a shimmering lake. It looked like a home, not a barracks. As the carriage pulled up to the entrance, the large oak doors swung open. A woman with silver hair braided down her back and kind, crinkling eyes stood there, flanked by other pack members. They were not smiling, but their expressions were open, curious, and respectful. There was no mockery in their eyes, no cruelty. Ronan stepped out of the carriage and then turned to help me down. He kept my hand in his as he led me up the steps. "This is my beta, Elena," he said, gesturing to the silver-haired woman. "Elena, this is Alara, my mate, the new Luna of Moonstone Ridge." Elena's eyes widened slightly in surprise, but she recovered quickly. She bowed her head deeply. "Luna Alara, welcome home." Home. The words sent a tremor through me. Could this really be my home? That night, I was shown to a suite of rooms that was larger than the entire servants' quarters I had left behind. There was a soft bed piled high with furs, a crackling fire in the hearth, and a balcony that overlooked the moonlit lake. A bath had been drawn for me, scented with lavender and herbs. The dress laid out for me was not a servant's tunic, but a simple, elegant gown of deep blue velvet. After I had bathed and dressed, feeling more human than I had in weeks, there was a soft knock on the door. It was Ronan. He held a small, intricately carved wooden box. "I thought you might be hungry," he said, his voice softer than I had heard it before. He led me to a small table by the fire, and we ate in comfortable silence. The food was simple but delicious: roasted chicken, fresh bread, and sweet berries. When we were finished, he looked at me, his expression serious. "Alara, I know this is a lot to take in," he began. "I do not know the full story of what happened to you at Crimson Rock, but I will. And there will be a reckoning. But that is for later. Tonight, I want you to know something." He leaned forward, his golden eyes intense. "The moon goddess does not make mistakes. She chose you for me, and me for you. That bond you thought you had with Kale, it was a shadow, a test, one that you have passed. How? My voice was a whisper. How did I pass? By being weak? By being rejected and humiliated? No, he said firmly. By surviving. By holding on to that core of steel within you, even when they tried their hardest to grind it into dust. I saw it in your eyes the moment I looked at you. You are not broken, Ilara. You are forged. He reached across the table and took my hand. His thumb gently stroked the back of it, sending shivers of warmth through me. "This is your home now," he said. "You are the Luna, my equal. No one will ever make you bow your head again. Rest, heal, and know that you are safe." He stood and left, closing the door softly behind him. I sat by the fire for a long time, his words echoing in my mind. Forged, not broken. For the first time since the day of my rejection, I allowed myself to cry. But these were not tears of pain or humiliation. They were tears of relief, of release, of a fragile, tentative hope that perhaps, just perhaps, my nightmare was over. And a new life, a real life, was just beginning. Luna, my wolf, curled up in my mind, her spirit finally at peace. And together we slept, a deep, dreamless sleep, under the watchful protection of the Alpha of Moonstone Ridge. The following days were a gentle unfolding, a slow, cautious blossoming in the warmth of my new reality. The members of the Moonstone Pack treated me with a quiet reverence that was both unnerving and deeply healing. They called me Luna, their heads bowed slightly in respect. They were curious, of course, but their questions were conveyed through soft, inquisitive glances, not intrusive whispers. Elena, Ronan's beta, became a gentle guide. She was wise and patient, her presence a constant source of calm. She showed me the territory, explained the pack's customs, and answered my hesitant questions without judgment. I learned that Moonstone Ridge was different from Crimson Rock in every conceivable way. Power here was not wielded like a club. It was a responsibility, a sacred trust. The pack was a family, bound by loyalty and mutual respect, not fear. Ronan was not a ruler who dictated from a throne. He was a leader who walked among his people, his strength a shield that protected them all. My relationship with Ronan deepened, but not in the way I would have expected. There was no whirlwind romance, no passionate declarations. Instead, he gave me something far more precious: space. He gave me time to heal. He never pushed, never demanded. He would simply appear at my side during a walk by the lake, or sit with me by the fire in the evenings, sharing stories of his pack, of his life. He was teaching me, I realized, what it meant to be truly valued. He was showing me, through his actions, that I was more than just a mate to be claimed. I was a partner to be cherished. The mate bond between us was a constant, humming current beneath the surface of our interactions. It was a silent conversation, a language of the soul. With every passing day, it grew stronger, weaving our spirits together. I started to feel his emotions as faint echoes of my own. A flash of pride when a young wolf succeeded in a hunt, a wave of concern for an elder who was unwell, a deep, abiding contentment as he watched over his pack. And sometimes, in the quiet of the night, I would feel a surge of fierce, protective tenderness directed at me, and I knew he was thinking of me. Luna thrived in this new environment. She was healing, her silver fur regaining its luster, her spirit rekindled. She adored Ronan's wolf, a massive obsidian black creature named Onyx. They would run together in our dreams, two spirits of the wild, perfectly matched, their howls a song of joy under the digital moon. But the shadows of my past were long. Nightmares still plagued me, visions of Kael's cold eyes and Lyra's triumphant sneer. The memory of the laughter, of the humiliation, was a stain that I feared would never wash away. I still flinched from loud noises, still instinctively bowed my head when someone addressed me. The servant was etched into my posture, into my soul. One evening, as we sat on the balcony of my room, watching the stars glitter on the surface of the lake, Ronan turned to me, his expression uncharacteristically grave. "A message came from Crimson Rock today," he said, his voice low. "Kael is demanding your return. He claims you are his property, that I stole you." A cold dread washed over me. "He can't. He won't," Ronan assured me, his hand covering mine. "But his arrogance is causing instability along the borders. He is trying to rally other packs against me, spreading lies that I am a tyrant who takes what he wants." "What will you do?" I whispered, my fear a cold knot in my stomach. "I will answer his challenge," Ronan said, his eyes hardening. "There is to be a conclave of the Western Alphas in 1 week's time. It is a neutral ground. Kael will make his accusation public, and I will give my response." He paused, his golden gaze searching mine. "I want you to come with me, Elara, but the choice is yours. It will not be easy to face them again. Face Kael, face Lyra, face the pack that had discarded me. The thought made me feel physically ill. I wanted to say no, to stay here in this sanctuary he had built for me. But then I looked at Ronan, at the quiet strength in his face, the unwavering belief in his eyes. He had called me forged, not broken. He had stood up for me when I had no one. I could not let him face this alone. It was my past, my battle as much as his. "I will come," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. A flicker of pride warmed his eyes. "Good. It is time they saw the true Luna of Moonstone Ridge." The week passed in a flurry of preparation, not for battle, but for a display of quiet, unshakable strength. Elena helped me choose my attire, not extravagant gowns, but simple, well-made dresses of fine wool and linen that spoke of quiet dignity. Ronan spent hours with me, not coaching me on what to say, but simply being with me. His presence a constant reassurance, strengthening the bond between us until I felt as though a part of his immense strength was my own. The day of the conclave arrived, a crisp autumn morning. We traveled not in a carriage, but on horseback, with Ronan's 4 most trusted warriors as our escort. As we rode, I felt a transformation within myself. The servant's stoop in my shoulders straightened. The fear in my heart did not vanish, but it was overshadowed by a new, steely resolve. I was not the same girl who had scrubbed floors and endured taunts. I was the mate of the Alpha of Alphas, and I would not be shamed again. The conclave was held in a clearing in the ancient woods that marked the boundary of several territories. A great bonfire burned in the center, and the alphas of a dozen packs were gathered, their betas and chief warriors behind them. I saw Kael immediately. He stood proud and arrogant, Lyra clinging to his arm, her eyes sweeping over the assembled crowd with a possessive air. When she saw us arrive, her eyes widened, and a slow, malicious smile spread across her face. We dismounted, and Ronan led me toward the center of the clearing. A murmur went through the crowd. They were all looking at me, whispering, their eyes filled with pity and morbid curiosity. They saw the former Omega, the rejected servant. Kael stepped forward, his voice booming across the clearing. Alpha Ronin, you have brought the stolen property with you, I see? Have you come to return her to her rightful pack? The insult was designed to provoke, to humiliate me from the outset. I flinched, but Ronin's hand tightened on mine, a silent message of support. Ronin met Kale's gaze, his expression unreadable. I have brought my mate, Luna Ilara of Moonstone Ridge, he said, his voice calm but carrying an authority that silenced the whispers. An old, respected alpha named Marcus, who was presiding over the conclave, stepped forward. Alpha Kale, you have lodged a formal complaint. State your case. Kale puffed out his chest. Alpha Ronin abused his power. He came to my pack lands and stole my Omega, Ilara. She was rejected, yes, but she was still a member of my pack, under my authority. He has violated the ancient laws of territory and possession. Lyra stepped forward, her face a mask of false sympathy. It is true. He bewitched her. She was a simple, broken thing, and he used his power to cloud her mind. We only want what is best for her, to return home where she can be cared for. The lies were so blatant, so twisted, that they took my breath away. Cared for? They had tormented me, broken my spirit, and cast me aside like trash. Alpha Marcus turned his gaze to Ronin. Alpha Ronin, your response. Ronin was silent for a long moment. Then he looked at me. Ilara, he said, his voice soft enough that only I could hear. You do not have to do this. I can end this now. I knew he could. He could challenge Kale, and the fight would be over in minutes. But this wasn't about a physical victory. It was about the truth. It was about reclaiming my voice. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, releasing Ronin's hand. I stood alone in the center of the circle, my heart pounding, but my resolve firm. I was not stolen, I said, my voice clear and steady, ringing with a strength I didn't know I possessed. It carried across the silent clearing. Every eye was on me. I left. I left a place where I was rejected, humiliated, and treated as less than a wolf. I looked directly at Kale, at the shock on his face. You did not just reject me, Kale. You tried to erase me. You and she, I gestured to Lyra, whose face was now pale with fury, turned my home into my pack into my tormentors. A murmur of unease rippled through the assembled alphas. This was not the story they had been told. I did not know what a true mate bond was until I met Alpha Ronin, I continued, my voice growing stronger with every word. What you and I had, Kale, was a pale imitation. The moon goddess corrected your mistake. She sent me my true mate, a man who saw worth in me when I had forgotten it myself, a man who healed what you broke. I turned to the other alphas. I was not stolen. I was saved. I did not leave my home. I was finally led to it. My place is at Moonstone Ridge, as its Luna. And I will not be used as a pawn in your games of power and pride any longer. Silence. A profound, stunned silence. No one had expected the servant girl to speak. No one had expected her to have such a powerful, unwavering voice. Then the silence was broken. It was Ronin. He stepped forward and came to my side. He did not take my hand, did not shield me. He stood beside me as an equal. And then he did something that sent a shockwave through the entire conclave. He bowed. Not a simple nod of the head, but a deep, formal bow from the waist. The alpha of alphas, the most powerful wolf in the territories, bowed before me, the rejected Omega, in front of all his peers. It was an act of ultimate respect, an undeniable public acknowledgement of my status, my strength, my worth. It was a declaration more powerful than any challenge, any threat. He was not just claiming me as his mate. He was honoring me as his Luna, his queen. Kale stared, his mouth agape, his face ashen. Lyra looked as though she had been slapped. The other alphas looked from Ronan to me, their expressions shifting from skepticism to awe to a dawning, profound respect. The laughter had died. The whispers had ceased. All that remained was the sight of the most powerful alpha in the world bowed in deference before the woman they had all dismissed. And in that moment, I was not the rejected Omega or the servant. I was Ilara, Luna of the Moonstone Ridge, and my voice had finally been heard. The image of Ronan bowing was seared into the minds of every alpha present. It was a gesture of such profound significance that it shifted the balance of the entire conclave. Kale's accusations, which had seemed like a legitimate grievance moments before, now looked petty and vindictive. Lyra's poisonous words evaporated into the cold autumn air, exposed as nothing more than jealous lies. Alpha Marcus, his weathered face etched with a newfound respect, was the first to speak. The conclave has heard both sides. It is clear there was no theft here. Luna Ilara has made her choice. The moon goddess has made hers. This matter is closed. His judgment was final, his voice leaving no room for argument. Kale looked around, his eyes wild, searching for an ally, a single face that held a flicker of support. He found none. He had been so sure of his ability to manipulate the other alphas, to paint Ronan as a villain and himself as the victim. But my testimony and Ronan's unprecedented act of deference had unraveled his entire scheme. He had not only lost the argument, he had lost face, a far greater wound for an alpha as proud as him. His gaze fell on me, and the look in his eyes was no longer just anger, but a venomous, curdled hatred. He had not just lost a potential mate, he had been publicly bested by the very person he had sought to crush. His humiliation was now complete, served back to him in the same public arena where he had engineered mine. Ronan straightened from his bow, his golden eyes meeting mine. The pride and love radiating from him were a warm, protective embrace. He offered me his arm, and I took it, standing tall beside him. Together, we turned our backs on Kale and Lyra and walked away from the bonfire, the silent, respectful gazes of the Western Alphas following our every step. Our exit was not a retreat. It was a victory lap. The ride back to Moonstone Ridge was different. The quiet tension was gone, replaced by a deep sense of peace and rightness. We rode side by side, our knees occasionally brushing, the simple contact sending sparks of awareness through me. The bond between us had been tested in the fire of public opinion and had emerged stronger, brighter, unbreakable. When we arrived back at the pack house, the entire Moonstone pack was gathered outside, waiting. Elena stood at the forefront, her expression calm, but I could see the relief in her eyes. News traveled fast in the shifter world. They already knew what had happened. As Ronan and I dismounted, a cheer went up from the crowd. It wasn't a wild, boisterous roar like the ones I had heard at Crimson Rock. It was a sound of genuine joy, of welcome, of acceptance. They were not just cheering for their alpha, they were cheering for me, their Luna. Over the next few weeks, the final vestiges of the servant girl Ilara fell away. I began to truly inhabit my role as Luna. I spent my days with Elena, learning the intricate workings of the pack, managing resources, settling minor disputes, caring for the elders and the young. I discovered I had a knack for it, a quiet intuition that allowed me to see the heart of a problem. The pack members, who had initially treated me with a cautious respect, now came to me with a genuine warmth and trust. They sought my counsel, valued my opinion. They saw me as I was becoming, not just Ronan's mate, but a leader in my own right. My relationship with Ronan continued to blossom in the fertile ground of this newfound peace. Our evenings were spent in quiet companionship, our conversations weaving a tapestry of shared dreams and healed wounds. He told me of his own scars, of the battles that had shaped him, of the loneliness of leadership. And I, in turn, found the courage to share the full extent of my pain, the deep wounds left by Kyle cruelty. He listened, his presence a safe harbor, his touch a gentle balm. One night, as a full moon hung in the sky like a silver lantern, casting a magical glow over the lake, Ronan led me out onto the balcony of our suite. "The moon is beautiful tonight," I whispered, leaning against the railing. "Not as beautiful as the woman standing beside me," he replied, his voice a low rumble. He came to stand behind me, his arms wrapping around my waist, pulling me back against his strong chest. The contact was electric, yet deeply comforting. I leaned my head back against his shoulder, my contentment so profound it was almost a physical ache. "Ilara," he murmured into my hair. I know the bond between us was forged in strife. It was immediate, a shock to us both. But what has grown since? It is something deeper, slower. I have come to admire you more than I can say. Your strength, your resilience, your gentle heart. I have fallen in love with you, my Luna. Tears welled in my eyes, happy tears. And I with you, Ronan, more than you know. He turned me in his arms, his golden eyes searching mine in the moonlight. He lowered his head, and his lips finally met mine. The kiss was not a fiery, possessive claiming. It was a question, a promise, a prayer. It was gentle and deep, a sealing of the bond not just of mates, but of hearts. It tasted of pine and moonlight, of safety and home. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathless. He rested his forehead against mine, his thumbs gently stroking my cheeks. "There is one last thing," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "A piece of your past that you need to know." He led me inside, to the intricately carved box he kept on his desk. He opened it and took out a small, leather-bound journal. The pages were old, the ink faded. "My father was the Alpha before me," he explained. "He kept records, histories. When I first met you, I felt a flicker of familiarity, something I couldn't place. I searched the archives. I found this." He opened the journal to a marked page. It was a log of pack movements, of alliances and disputes from decades ago. My eyes scanned the page, and then I saw it. A name. Serafina. "My mother's name," I whispered, my heart beginning to pound. My mother had died when I was very young. I barely remembered her, only that she was kind and that my father, who had also passed years ago, had loved her dearly. She was an Omega, they had told me, from a small, displaced pack. "Read on," Ronan urged gently. The entry described the meeting between Ronan's father and the Alpha of a small visiting pack, the Silver Moon Pack, a pack known for its rare and powerful lineage of Lunas. True Lunas, they were called, Omegas born with a unique connection to the moon goddess, possessing gifts of healing and prophecy. The entry noted that the Alpha's daughter, Serafina, was with him, and that she had chosen to stay behind, having fallen for a warrior from Crimson Rock. The Silver Moon Pack was scattered by a rogue attack years later, Ronan explained softly. They were all but wiped out. The world thought their line was extinguished. He looked at me, his eyes filled with awe. "Your mother was not just an Omega, Ilara. She was the last daughter of the Silver Moon Pack. That lineage, that power, it did not die with her. It lives in you. It all clicked into place. The weakness Kyle had sensed in me wasn't weakness at all. It was a different kind of power, a latent magic he couldn't recognize or understand. The mate bond with him had been a pale echo because my soul was waiting for a mate strong enough to match the power dormant within me. My true heritage. I was not just an Omega. I was the heir to a line of legendary Lunas. Tears streamed down my face as I looked from the journal to Ronan. He had not just saved me from a life of servitude. He had uncovered the truth of who I was. He had not just given me a home. He had given me back my history, my legacy. He wiped my tears with his thumb. Kale threw away a diamond because he was looking for a stone, he said softly. His loss, my eternal gain. The wounds of the past were still there, faint scars on my soul, but they no longer ached. They were a part of my story, a testament to the journey that had led me here, to this man, to this life. Weeks later, a messenger arrived, bearing a sealed scroll from the Crimson Rock Pack. It was a formal plea for aid. Since the conclave, Kale's authority had crumbled. His pack was in disarray, plagued by infighting and challenges to his rule. Lyra, seeing his weakness, had abandoned him, attempting to ally herself with a rival pack. The Crimson Rock Pack, once proud and strong, was on the verge of collapse. Kyle was begging for assistance from the very Alpha he had tried to discredit. Ronan read the message, his face impassive. He then handed it to me. "It is your decision, my Luna. They are your former people." I read Kyle's desperate, groveling words. I thought of the laughter, the cruelty, the cold stone floors. A part of me felt a grim satisfaction at his downfall. But then I thought of the others, the pack members who were not inherently cruel but had been led astray by a weak Alpha. The children, the elders. They did not deserve to suffer for their leader's failings. My mother's legacy, the legacy of a true Luna, was not one of vengeance, but of healing. I looked at Ronan, my decision made. "We will help them," I said. "Not for Kyle's sake, but for the pack's. A true leader does not let the innocent suffer." Pride shone in his eyes. He nodded. "As you wish." We journeyed to Crimson Rock, not as conquerors, but as allies. The pack that greeted us was a shadow of its former self, their faces etched with fear and uncertainty. Kyle stood before us, no longer arrogant, but broken. The Alpha who had shattered me was now a man shattered himself. He could not meet my eyes. He formally relinquished his title, ceding control of the pack to Ronan's authority until a new worthy Alpha could be found. He did not beg for my forgiveness. He simply accepted his fate. There was no triumph in his defeat, only a quiet, sad resolution. While Ronan worked to restore order, I walked among the people. Some looked at me with shame, others with a desperate hope. I offered not condemnation, but compassion. I used the nascent healing abilities that were awakening within me, a gentle touch that soothed fevers, a calm presence that eased anxieties. I was not just a Luna. I was a healer. I was home. One afternoon, as I was distributing food supplies in the village, I saw a group of young Omega children huddled together, their eyes wide and fearful. They looked at me as if I were a queen from a storybook. I remembered being that small, that invisible. I knelt before them, a gentle smile on my face. "There is nothing to be afraid of," I said softly. "Things are changing. You are all strong. You are all worthy. Never let anyone tell you otherwise." A small girl, braver than the rest, reached out and timidly touched the sleeve of my velvet dress. "Are you magic?" she whispered. I looked over at Ronan, who was watching me from a distance, the love in his gaze a tangible thing. I thought of my mother, of the long-lost line of Silver Moon Lunas. I thought of the servant girl who had wept on a straw pallet, and the Luna who now stood as a beacon of hope for 2 packs. I smiled at the little girl, my heart full. Yes, I said, I think I am. Later that evening, standing on the ramparts of the Crimson Rock pack house, looking out over the lands that had once been my prison, Ronan came to stand beside me. The air was cool, carrying the promise of a changing season, a new era. You have saved them, he said quietly. We saved them, I corrected, slipping my hand into his. He brought my hand to his lips, kissing my knuckles. Kale was a fool. Every day, I thank the moon goddess for his foolishness. I leaned my head on his shoulder, watching the first stars begin to appear in the twilight sky. The laughter that had once haunted me was a distant echo, drowned out by the sound of my own steady heartbeat, by the whisper of the wind, by the deep, comforting rumble of my mate's voice. I was no longer defined by my rejection, but by my resilience, not by my fall, but by my rise. Here, beside the man who saw the queen in the servant girl, I was finally, completely home.